I'm Pat Miller, and this is the Professional Photographer Podcast. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're probably going to lie. Doubt me? You get this question all the time, and most of us lie every time we're asked it. Are you ready? Are you sure? Here it is. Cue the lie. How are you today? I'm fine. Are you fine? I'm fine is the international band-aid that goes over the dumpster fire in the back of our life. We say we're fine. But what that means is, yeah, in my personal life, the house is a mess. I haven't done the laundry. We need to go to the grocery store. The kids were late for school this morning, and the dog needs to go to the vet. And in our professional life, my email box is exploding. I haven't sent those images to the client. I've got 3 leads that I haven't even followed up on, but I'm fine. Oh, and I haven't worked out. Oh, and I've been eating like junk. Oh, and I've been staying up really late watching TikTok. Sound familiar? But I'm fine. No, I'm fine. And we wonder why we're not killing it in our business. Today's conversation is for you if that's how you feel. What do we need to do to win? What are the healthy habits of high performers? Wouldn't you like to know? And what if it's pretty darn simple? Our guest today is Lindsay Vastola, one of our keynote speakers at Imaging USA in Dallas in February of 2025. You got to be there, by the way. It's going to be a big old party, I'm telling you. Everything's bigger in Texas, including the parties. But you got to come see Lindsay, and you got to learn about this topic because she might have what you're missing to lead a better life, to build a better studio, and to just be happier. If you're fine, I'm talking directly to you. Lindsay Vastola is standing by. We'll hear about her imaging talk, and we'll learn a little bit about high-performing photographers after this. Lindsay Vastola, welcome to the Professional Photographer Podcast. How are things?
Hey, Pat. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. We've had some conversations beforehand, and I'm thrilled to be here and talk to the PPA audience.
We're excited to have you here, and we get the chance to learn from you, your presentation, the tactics of healthy high achievers in business at Imaging USA in Dallas in early February. So I have 1,000 questions around that topic. But let's start by diving into the healthy habits of these high-performing photographers. Do you think that the average photographer watching this right now that's struggling with work-life balance and stress management, do you think the average photographer feels good about how they're managing those areas of their life?
I'll give you the short answer, and then I'll expand for, that's what we're here for, right? The short answer is no, I don't think that everybody feels like they're mastering this part of my life and Pat, or their life. Pat, what I like to bring through these sessions is keep them really candid and real. These are things I still struggle with as an entrepreneur and business owner. And so by no means are any of us expert. Nobody gives us this playbook. And I think that most of us struggle as business owners, as photographers in particular, because I'm really thinking about the challenges that they face that are so unique to the demands of creating a product that they're proud of. They really, photographers really are in many ways the product that they provide. All of the relationship piece of it, managing relationships, managing the business. And then, we have to go home and we have to be great parents, great spouses, great friends, great daughters or sons. And I'm sure many are involved in things in the community. And where I find the biggest struggle is like a mismatch. We use this word work-life balance, and I think over the years it's created this expectation that there's some sort of equilibrium or that it's so many hours and that it has to look a certain way. And what that has done actually is created more stress on us to try to chase this elusive ghost that really is never something we're ever going to catch. And that's really the crux of the whole conversation is how do we feel like we can win at work, win at life, and not feel like one is at the cost of the other. And I know that we'll go into more in detail, but I think in short is I don't think that the average person with the demands of work life, the realities of navigating all of those demands, I don't know if anybody really feels 100% in control. And I think even those that may feel that are always looking for ways to fine tune it or to better it given the different seasons of life, work, and business.
I love the fact that you said win at life, because oftentimes, at least for myself, it feels like I'm losing. Like I'm losing this battle when it comes to balancing. And you talk about this idea that we should have this balance, but it ends up, at the end of the day or at the end of the week, it sometimes feels like losing, and it's depressing.
It does. And I think that the hardest just human to human conversations that we have is I almost call it like the Jekyll and Hyde. A lot of us show up in our professional realm, this confident, we have our services, we have a trade that we're really good at, that a craft that we've put so much into. And then, but we always feel like it's at the cost. It's at the cost of time with my family, at the cost of my sleep, at my own health and well-being. Like we're kind of giving it away. And it makes us feel like a failure in some regard. And that's a real trap and a real spiral. We just don't know how. And I think that that's what most of us want is, again, this like sort of elusive work-life balance, like it's this some sort of end goal that we achieve and we stay there. And I really think most of us, we just want more effective, more efficient ways to navigate, call it chaos, call it challenges, call it real life. We just want to feel, I always hear this word, like I just want to feel more in control. I want to feel, I don't want to feel like I'm giving everything, my time, my energy away to everybody else, and I'm not doing anything for me. And there's a lot of mindset stuff around there we can talk about. But yeah, that failure piece, it's like at the cost of something. That's one of the biggest questions that I talk about is, at what cost? So I can work late hours, but at what cost? I can take that client that I don't really want, but I need the money, but at what cost? I can, have the tough conversation. I have 2 young kids. And so a lot of it is having conversations with them about navigating my work priorities, why it's important to me. But also, again, like, at what cost? For everything we say yes to, we say no to something else. And I think that's a real central question to ask. And there's no right or wrong. It's just kind of standing in at what cost, acknowledging, having the self-awareness around it, and then being able to communicate that and kind of live that out tangibly.
Do you have t-shirts that say at what cost?
I should. At what
That's
cost?
gold. At what cost right here, or a coffee mug that says at what cost, because that is such a great point, because we are making the choices that make us miserable. We're the ones responsible for the schedule. We're the ones that overclocked our life.
And my dad asked me that question. I used to work in corporate management in New York City, and I was young and I had the energy and I didn't have kids at the time. But he said, Lindsay, you can continue to do this grind and feel like you're not appreciated in your job. And he also knew, as my dad, that I probably had bigger aspirations than what I was doing. But he said, Lindsay, you can continue to do this, but at what cost? And is cost of your health, cost of, I can make more money, but at the cost of what, right? And maybe and there's no right or wrong. That's really the thing. I think that the linchpin of this is saying, I'm willing to do this, but not at that cost, creating some very clear parameters, guardrails, I like to say, even more than boundaries. It's, a word that I think is used quite a bit. But again, nobody gives us a handbook for this kind of stuff. So that's what I hope to at least go into, like some tangible things of, at what cost? How do I determine that? And what does that look like in everyday life?
Before we get into the strategies, I want to make sure that the person watching this identifies that we're talking to them. Like, you're the one we're trying to help. And you hit on something that I really want to call out and make clear. We're fine. I'm fine. No, you're not fine. Is the concept of I'm fine and professional fineness stopping a lot of people from identifying that they are out of balance?
I think that needs to be a shirt. Like, I'm fine.
I'm fine.
I laugh because I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day who's a colleague, entrepreneur as well. And we do this thing where it's like, how are you doing? I'm fine. And fine is code word for I've got some of my stuff together over here, but actually on the inside, I'm about to break. I'm completely depleted. I am stretched so thin. I have this push and this pull, and I can't figure it out. That fineness, and I think that goes especially for driven individuals. I think we are a unique breed as business owners and entrepreneurs. The biggest paradox for us is we crave success. We want to serve people. We want to be successful from a professional standpoint. That gives us our identity. That gives us a lot of our purpose. But again, this paradox of, but I also want to be the most amazing mom and the most amazing daughter and be a leader in my community. And where is that tender balance that we toe? And that's why we say I'm fine, because we also don't want to, we have a hard time, I think, often admitting that we're having a hard time, which only perpetuates that internal struggle and some of the outcomes that we start seeing, burnout and things like how it manifests in our everyday life and decreases productivity and just creates that cycle. But the I'm fine, and maybe for the listeners, it's really become a point of self-awareness for me. Like I can't use that anymore. I can't say I'm fine, because if I'm not, then I have to take some personal leadership and do something about it. Or, actually kind of take some acceptance of where I am. Ownership, personal ownership and leadership.
Well, and it's almost, if someone says, how are you? If you're good, you'll say, I'm great. I've got stuff going on. I'm interviewing Lindsay today. It's great. Like you'll say that. Mm-hmm. If you're not, it's fine. And then you know that alarm bells are going off. So I'm really glad that you called that out. We're going to talk about some of the solutions here in a second, but I want to get out of feelings and I want to make this really clear. What are the behaviors that people begin exhibiting when they're fine or not fine? Like, what are they doing that they could objectively look at? Oh, I did do that, and I have been doing that. Those might be other ways to know that they've got some work to do.
Sure. This really happens, I think, well, I'd say 3 levels, but probably I'd add a 4th. One, physiologically. I mean, this is fatigue, can't sleep, no appetite, overeating, undereating, lack of just like physical vitality, lethargy, right? We just don't have the physical. And I think it's important, I spent 15 years of my career in fitness, wellness, and health. And usually physical is just the manifestation, the signs of what's going on mentally and emotionally. Mentally, emotionally, we even lose our zest for the thing we were most passionate about at one point. That's the kicker, because it's like 10 years ago when I started my business, I was so excited to go have a sales consultation or to go on site and shoot a wedding or whatever it might be. And we lose the excitement for the exact thing that we were doing. And I think that cues other things. But if we're talking about like symptoms of sort of that work-life imbalance, or even burnout, procrastination. So this is where like productivity, so emotional, mental, procrastination, zoning out on social media, avoiding the things that we should be doing, short-tempered. We feel like we don't have emotional management, can't sleep. Again, like it's this slurry of symptoms. A big one that a lot of people will actually say and maybe not make the connection is self-sabotage. So it's like this roller coaster of, hey, today's going to be a great day. And I sat in on a seminar. I listened to a podcast on PPA. Like I'm excited and I'm motivated. And then something happens in real life and we're back at the bottom and we go through this roller coaster, which is absolutely exhausting. And it's not helping productivity. Productivity for high performers is the secret sauce. It's the secret elixir for success. If we don't feel productive, we don't feel like we have purpose or meaning. And so the counter to that is we feel stuck. So again, back to those symptoms. We feel stuck. We can't even see 1 month ahead, or and we're just putting out fires right now. So those are some of the symptoms. I think, kind of to encapsulate this, I had a business mentor of mine at once, when I was really at a crux of my business, where I was kind of deciding, like, do I love this as much as I used to? What's next for me? And he said, Lindsay, if possibilities were limitless for you, what would life look like? What would work in life look like? What would that look like every day? I couldn't answer him. And that was a real aha moment for me, because I always considered myself very forward looking and goal driven and vision. I have vision. And the fact that I couldn't think beyond the here and now because I was so overwhelmed and inundated, it told me I had to make a clear decision. There was a decision I needed to make before it even opened up space in my mind to think about what's next. And I think that's where we get caught, is we think about what's next, the future, because we're supposed to. And there's something throttling that, a stressor, a routine, habits, personal or professional, that's kind of throttling that. So I hope that gives a good sense to help somebody listening to this identify, like, oh, maybe I do need to evaluate my habits, routines, mindset, work, and life, or at least take some pause and look outward a bit, inward and outward. Yes.
That tag you can put of I'm in this picture and I don't like it. So if you've been watching this episode, you're like, hey, wait a minute, they're talking about me, and maybe you didn't realize. So the fact that Lindsay's laid all this out for us, this has been really great. So you're maybe thinking, okay, I can't see next year the way that I want. I can't see the goals that I'm chasing. I am physically feeling my overwork and burnout. How can I make this better? Because it would just be a malpractice to start the conversation and not try and fix it.
Absolutely.
So tell us, where do you start the conversation with someone that feels this way and they want to dig themselves out?
Well, first of all, I would give credit to that person for not trying, or stop trying to figure it out on their own. I think before they're even sitting in front of me or in a workshop or something, they had to at some point acknowledge, oof, I can't figure this out on my own anymore. So that's kind of the first step, I think. That sounds so self-helpy, but it's really true. When we are, then the first question, and I know this is going to sound a little bit counter to what I just said about not being able to see the future, is I do this. I mean, it works for personal life. It works for business. It works from a day-to-day and moment-to-moment interactions. Start with the end in mind. This helps you take facts and separate them from feelings. It gives you a clear filter for your decisions and what you do, because if there's a vision, a goal, something you're working toward, then everything can filter through that. You can reverse engineer it and create kind of a plan. Now, what do I mean by end in mind? Some people think like this has to be this big, extravagant goal. And I think we need to pare it down to the point I just said about, like, if possibilities were limitless. Some of us are so overwhelmed, we can't think of that bigger vision even for our business. Here's a question I like to cue in that starts to kind of tease that. It's like a fill in the blank. I want to be the kind of person who, insert here. Wow. I want to be the kind of person who, insert here. And I don't, and the thing is they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm leaving it open-ended very intentionally. We lose that part of our brain because they're thinking I'm expecting something, some stock answer. And this can be everything from, I know my personal is, I want to be the kind of person who's decisive, who doesn't second guess myself, who prioritizes herself so that I can be better for my kids and for my business. I'm the kind of person that bets on myself. I'm the kind of person who wakes up every morning and goes to the gym because it gives me mental clarity so that I can be better in my business. And I say, I keep a notes, like I encourage people to keep this in a phone, in your phone notes or something. That way, when you're like, oh, I admire that person who can do that. Maybe that's a cue of something that you want to better in your life. So end in mind, if I want to say, I want to be the kind of person who's decisive, That's kind of an end goal. Okay. So now every day when I'm causing undue stress on myself for not deciding whatever it might be, a vendor to go with, or whether or not to take this client, now I can say, but I'm the kind of person who's decisive. What would the decisive Lindsay do? She would make a decision, and she would be like, she would stand in her decision and listen. If it's the wrong decision, she would, I'm the kind of person who has the confidence to admit I'm wrong and go back and fix the mistake. So it creates this really concrete list that then your behaviors, your actions, your habits can start to mirror. And again, this parlays, you can use it in business as well for business vision. But I think that from a personal standpoint, that's a great place to start.
That has to blow people's mind, because when you're in the photography industry, you may be trying to build a business in life. So you're like this famous photographer, or I might be trying to build a business I want to be like Simon Sinek. But instead of trying to model what someone else has done, that question forces them to model the daily behavior and the type of person they want to be so they can become whatever it is they intend to become. When you drop that on someone, their head just must go poof.
And I let it go. This will be like a one call. Like this can consume a lot, because we can take all the different angles of life. I want to be the kind of person who charges top dollar for my services and am proud of it. I want to be the kind of person who can confidently say no to a client that I don't, that's not in my niche, for example. I want to be the kind of person who, how you show up in all realms of your life. And I think the laundry list is an important first start, because then you can see patterns and you can extrapolate one or two that become kind of your focus. It also becomes an anchor. So real life happens. So, when I'm working with my clients or companies, real life happens. Like, you're motivated the day you talk to me, like, yeah, I want to be this person. And then I talk to you again and again and again. And 3 weeks later, you have a sick parent in the hospital, or you lost the client, or you got some bad feedback from, a recent shoot that you did, and you're at that pit. We can go back, but you said you wanted to be the kind of person who is decisive and stood like, I want to be the kind of person who can, take feedback critically and be able to make adjustments accordingly without falling into a state of depression. And that's really, I think those are things that are really applicable to so many. So it creates an anchor and it gets the brain thinking. It's important for us to remember that you've probably heard the phrase, because Simon Sinek says it, but like, what you focus on expands, what you focus on grows. So when you start saying, I'm the kind of person who, like, I don't like selling myself because I would do this for free, right? Well, or simple things, even like opening the refrigerator and saying, I can't eat X, Y, and Z, it really goes in every realm of our life. Whenever we say, I'm the kind of person who blank, our brain says, oh, it doesn't understand the difference between sarcasm and reality. So it just looks to confirm the things that you're saying. And so if you're looking at those challenges and your gaps, if you will, you have to tell your brain where to go. And at first you don't believe yourself. Like, if I'm not a decisive person, typically I have to literally fake it and say it. That's why even mantras and but I am a decisive person. What's the future version of Lindsay? There's a few different ways to do it. But it's like flexing a muscle. You have to do it over and over again. But that's why that list, I think, is so important.
This is scrambling the perception we have of work and control and achievement and what it takes to get there. That conversation internally must be the first step towards moving to where we want to go.
It's everything. How we talk to ourselves dictates, emotions and thoughts dictate our habits, our behaviors, and ultimately dictate our outcome. And it's so easy, and this sounds a little bit cliche. Everybody's probably heard it at some point, but would you talk to your daughter or son or your best friend or your client in the same way that you talk to yourself? And it's very hard, because we're here so often. That's why I love the strategy. So I don't want to jump ahead, but here's another strategy: is how do we separate facts from feelings? And I'm like I'm enamored with the idea of emotional intelligence. I talk a lot about self-awareness and, the facets there. So I don't mean to say feelings, don't pay attention to them and they're not real, but getting to where we want to go, when we can say, okay, I received bad feedback from this client. Fact, they weren't happy. Fact, I did my best. Fact, this is not the kind of client that ultimately is aligned. Fact, that's probably why, my delivery didn't meet their expectations. Fact, I wasn't clear with my expectations. Yet most of us get caught up in like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they said that. Like, how would they say that? And maybe I'm not a good photographer, and you have imposter syndrome and all the things that flow here. This is a vortex that leads down that path. Then that's stress management. And it's not productive. It's just you're bleeding energy. And so when we start laying out facts, we take emotion out of it, and then we create a plan with that end in mind. Even if this in this micro example might be, coming to a good conclusion with that client where that everybody feels good about. So
when we think about our emotions and we think about getting through every day, you've identified a couple of things already that I'm kind of pulling together into, it's not necessarily what is said to us, it's what we say about that and how we communicate back. I'm fine, or I'm the type of person who, these are things we're saying. Mm-hmm. So when we're having interpersonal communication, are there other ways that we are, talking back with people and using our words with others that help reinforce the type of person we are, or reinforce how overwhelmed and out of control we are?
That's such a great question. And I think that this comes to, we use the word, or it's sort of like the work-life balance is stress management. And we throw this around like, I just need to manage my stress better. What does that even mean? Like, what does stress management actually mean? And I think that it's how much we allow to impact how we think, how we respond, and those interactions. So before we can even talk about stress management, I think communication management, to your point, is we are in interactions all day long. I think that this starts, number one, with self-awareness. I like to imagine we all walk around with a panel of buttons, and each button represents things that trigger excitement, trigger depression, trigger frustration. Our motivators, our demotivators. And the better aware we can be of our panel of buttons. So when somebody says to me, this is so silly, but I don't know why this came to mind. When somebody calls me a guru, it hits a button in me. I'm like, I don't like to be, this is such a silly question or example, but when somebody calls me something and it really strikes a chord with me, because imposter syndrome, they see it a certain way. So how do I respond? I'll usually deflect. I'll put down. I'll downplay my own, they obviously saw me a certain way. I just didn't like the word. And now I'm projecting back my own insecurities about something. And we can do this sales conversations. And that's why having real practice, and I know PPA, you guys do a fantastic job, especially I know you've had some podcast episodes on this, communication management, how to respond to an objection in a confident, competent way. And a lot of that just comes with, it's a skill set. I think that's what it comes down to. So putting yourself around other people who can be honest with you. This is why I'm a big fan of coaching, mentorship, groups of like-minded individuals who are not afraid to be honest with you, but you have to be honest with paying attention to where those triggers are. So I don't know if I answered that directly, but I think that panel of buttons, and then on the flip side is the better you can try to understand the panel of buttons on the person you're interacting with. So I'll take the example of, I don't know, a bride and a groom, right? And you're sitting and you're pitching a proposal. What are their buttons? What are things that they're anxious or, that they might be nervous about? How can you shift the way that you have that conversation with them that enables a more productive conversation, but you know what their buttons are in all ways. And that's why I think, again, I don't want to digress, but from a business standpoint, really understanding who you serve, who you don't serve, You're not trying to be all things to all people, helps you hone in your communication skills. When you feel like you can more confidently and competently communicate the value you bring, ask for what you're worth, your stress management goes down, or, you're better stress managed. You're more confident, which means you're more likely to wake up, exercise, make better food choices, be a more, caring, nurturing, calm, centered mother, husband, dad, So I hope everybody's kind of seeing the trickle effect of why I'm so passionate about communication management with yourself and others is so central.
And I love the guru story, because if you're someone that's overwhelmed and you're out of control, you think success looks like, I don't have buttons. Lindsay doesn't have buttons. Simon Sinek doesn't have buttons. I need to get to that point, when in reality, we've all got buttons, and success doesn't look like having no buttons.
Yes.
Success looks like knowing how to manage them, right?
Exactly. And it's not right. It's not saying they're not even right or wrong or good or bad. It's how do I manage them to most effectively get me to the end in mind, the kind of person that I want to. I don't want to be the kind of person that gets agitated quickly. Another tool that I love using, I call it aim for center. This is something that I think can be done day to day, moment to moment. Is if, and I kind of pose it this way: imagine a bullseye. And at the center of a dartboard, and the bullseye, imagine your bullseye. And a bullseye is where you operate at your best. This is when you feel like, call it your zone, your lane of genius. Sure. You're productive. You feel energized. You feel like you can conquer the world. You're productive. So physically, mentally, emotionally, professionally, this is your sweet spot. Now we need to think about, what are the things that I'm doing when I'm at that spot? Who are the kind of people I'm around? What am I listening to? What am I reading? How much sleep am I getting? When am I taking a walk or exercising? Am I praying? Am I meditating? What are the things professionally that I'm doing that are giving me energy? Then once we have that awareness, we can start saying, okay, what are the 1, 2, 3 things that I need to anchor every day to ensure that I stay as close to that bullseye as possible? Because the reality of everyday life is we kind of go like this, like stuck in traffic. Oh, that client asked for a refund. My daughter is sick. And before you know it, we're out here. And most of us are existing out here. That's why we feel overwhelmed. And it's not that we're not, like, this is going to happen in everyday life. The key really is, how quickly can I course correct and get back to center? And again, moment to moment, day to day, week to week. And when we feel like we're at this center, and it's very strategic, it's like the 1, 2, 3 things. And this is, I bullet point this with my clients. Like, oh, they'll even say, like, I'm getting away from center. I know I need to aim for center. It's just a very visual way to say, ooh, when I'm at my best, these are the things that I'm doing, and as best as possible, making those non-negotiable.
Aim for center is so good. And fact or fiction is another great strategy piece when contact comes in, and we have to determine what's real and what are we inventing in our head. I love both of those things. I think when people think about success, they think, well, I got to go get an MBA. I need to hire a second shooter. I need to make a $10,000 sale. I need to do all of these things to be considered a high performer. Those are the actions. But what you were just sharing in your experience of coaching high performers, the daily habits, the meditation and prayer, the eating the right stuff, the hitting the treadmill, can it really be that simple?
It's simple, but not always easy. That's the catch. Is that the next t-shirt that we're looking for?
Yes, absolutely.
It's simple, but it's not always easy. And when I say simple, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but this is where work-life balance, trying to strive for that, I call it that, like, elusive ghost, actually creates more stress for us. And so if you're asking me sort of like, what's the process I take someone through? It's end in mind. Now we got to see where you operate at your best typically. Where in your life, work and life, are you overcomplicating things that could actually be simpler and yield you far better productivity, purpose, on a, again, moment to moment, day to day basis. And I think that's what most people would define as success. When I can put my head on the pillow, I get like choked up thinking about this because like when we can put our head on the pillow and say, I won the day. It wasn't perfect. It was messy at sometimes, but I took care of myself. I set up the day to succeed. I'm going to be careful saying this because morning routines have really been botched these days. Like simply, I started my day to set the tone. I showed up for my kids. I showed up for my husband in the way that I want to. I showed up for my clients. I did what excited me. Yeah, I had to do some of that grindy stuff too, and the client email, this and that. But those are opportunities for me to stretch and discern. Ooh, these are things down the road I don't want to be doing. They suck my energy. Right? We're just kind of taking ourselves outside of ourselves and saying, how can I win the day? Because if I can stack those days, tell me that in 1 year, if you hit even 70 days that you win, tell me that you're not closer to those bigger visions, bigger dreams, bigger goals that you have. But it really comes down to like, what are we doing on a day-to-day basis with ourselves, leading ourselves, and not just giving it away to everybody else.
And getting there through simplicity and what's important to us, because this is the type of person that I am now. It's just awesome. And the clarity and simplicity is great. And we have a whole new t-shirt line.
Yeah, apparently. New business that's going to take our work-life balance off kilter.
It's going to be great. Let's turn our attention to Imaging USA in Dallas, where we get to buy your t-shirts. Tactics of a healthy high achiever in business. What can we expect from the presentation?
Oh, I am so excited. This is one of my favorite presentations. I love that. I think we have 90 minutes together, which I really like to take it. We're not going to talk theory. This is very conversational, almost, dare I say, workshoppy. I want people to leave saying, this is the thing that I can start tomorrow morning, even when I'm in a hotel. Like, I want people to think differently about how they navigate work and life. And so we'll do some of my favorite, and I'm calling them exercises, meaning, self-awareness. I do this really fun thing where we get up and we identify how we communicate, how others communicate, how that can help our sales conversations. So we'll talk about that as it relates to work. And then just walking away with some really tangible strategies. I said, just to tie it back to where we were in the beginning, it's not just inspirational and motivational. I want you to leave inspired and motivated, but I want you to leave with things you feel like you can easily and simply integrate into your life without it feeling like it's one more thing on the to-do list.
Yeah. And your training and your workshops, this is a large room. This is a big group of people. So when you get the chance to talk to a group this big, what makes it fun for you? Because if you and I sat down, you'd change my life. When you get the chance to change people at scale in an event like this, what does that mean to you as the presenter?
This is, I humbly take this as like, I am just there to facilitate some great conversation, to make you think differently. I do like engaging, and I love that everybody is there really in kind of the same line of craft and intention. Obviously, they've taken the time away from their work and their families to be there. So I do not take that lightly. What excites me, and this is probably cliche, it's the energy that you get in an in-person experience that I hope you feel inspired by this podcast, but it's so different. I'm coming off of 2 events in the last couple of weeks, and I can see there's a direct correlation, causation, whichever one, between interacting in real life with people, whether you're presenting or there as a member of the audience, and success, drive, and direct results in the business. There's just no other. So if I can be a facilitator in that for those in the audience, both in their work and life, that gives me purpose. And that's why I'm so excited about being at Imaging.
Success, drive, and results in the business. Well, I'll be there with my notebook, ready to learn from you. Lindsay Vastola, thank you for joining us in the Professional Photographer Podcast. We'll see you in Dallas.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Professional Photographer Podcast. It's been so fun lately. Like the last few guests we've had, man, they're just keeping me excited about this. We're already cooking up some other great stuff. So make sure you click subscribe before you go. I mean, if you got this far, you must have enjoyed the episode. So click subscribe, and bonus tip, like super high five from me if you'll do it, leave a comment wherever you're watching the show or listening to the show. If you do that, that helps the guests know that they connected with you, and it helps us know that we're talking about things that you want to hear. So subscribe and comment. That's super helpful. Also, if you're not yet a member of the Professional Photographers of America, you're truly missing out. PPA offers incredible resources like equipment insurance, top-notch education, and a supportive community of photographers ready to help you succeed. It's perfect for photographers who are serious about growing their business in a sustainable and profitable way. At PPA, you belong here. Discover more about membership at ppa.com. That's ppa.com. I'm Pat Miller, founder of the Small Business Owners Community and your proud host of this show. Thanks for joining us and tuning in, and thanks for clicking subscribe, because you did click the subscribe button, right? I'm seeing you. You hit, okay, good. When you do, we'll be back in your feed real soon with tools to help you build your business with the Professional Photographer Podcast. See you next time.